Knox County students. I'm Caitlin Nell, and I teach at Southdale Middle School. Today's lesson is based on the week 4 assignment for grade 7 ELA. If you don't have this assignment, it can be found by visiting the KCS website at knoxschools.org. Click where it says Student Resources. If you would like to have this lesson printed, the middle school packets are handed out on Mondays and Wednesdays between 10 a.m. and noon at each of our meal distribution sites. A list of those sites can be found under the Meal Distribution tab at the KCS website. Please be sure to complete the entire week's assignment before continuing this video. Like I said, if you haven't completed the week 4 assignments, stop and return to this video once you have finished your work so we can go over it together. Now let's get started. This week was a continuation of some of the information that you learned last week in the article about how advertisers target kids with their strategies. This week on Monday, you were supposed to watch the YouTube video posted by The Richest called 10 Ways Advertisers Are Tricking You Every Day. And after you watched the video, your first step was to collect that list of words and terms from the video. And then step 2 for Monday was to sort the words into groups or categories. And you were going to come up with those categories on your own. And I'm going to show you and share some strategies for how I did that. The first strategy that I used was to watch the video twice. The first time I watched it for comprehension. Whenever I'm watching something, a video, or I'm reading something, oftentimes it's difficult for me to really analyze something deeply by just watching it one time. A lot of times I have to watch it or read it 2 times in order to get the depth that I'm looking for. So I watched it once, all the way through, noting things as I was watching, and then I watched it another time and paused it at certain places so that I could take notes as I went along. I want to share with you a couple of strategies that I used while I was collecting my list of words. My first strategy would be repetition. When you're looking for words that stand out to you, anytime an author or a video is repeating a word, whether it is a poem, a movie, a book, an informational text, no matter what it is, if a word is being repeated, the author, the writer, the speaker is trying to emphasize something to the reader or the viewer. So repetition was something that I looked for a lot, and I saw a lot of words repeated over and over again. Another thing that I looked for was words or terms that directly connected to the central idea of the text. So the first time that I watched it, when I was looking for some possible terms and words that would go along with the central idea, I looked at the title, because in an informational text, the title always hints at or directly communicates the central idea. And in our case, the title was 10 Ways Advertisers Are Tricking You Every Day. I don't know about you, but that to me is a pretty clear indication of what that video was about. That whole video was about how advertisers are tricking us in our everyday lives. And it gave us 10 ways that they did that. So that was a really good hint that I used in making sure that I was sticking to the central idea. How are advertisers tricking us? I also used this list of words. It says, after step 1, it says to collect a list of words and terms from the video and look for the following: topic, define terms, important ideas, process steps, facts, or numbers. And those were really helpful in identifying some other words that were going to be important. And you're getting a little preview of some of the words that I chose, which is fine because you should have already found your words. But I want to model for you why I chose the words that I did. So to do that, I'm going to show you about 20 to 30 seconds of our video. And I'm going to give you the thinking behind why I chose the words that I did and how I applied the strategies that I already shared.
We know that companies are just interested in selling their products when they create their advertising, but we like to think that we're too smart to fall for their tricks. But advertisers are good at their jobs, and you might be getting bamboozled by techniques you weren't even aware of. In this video, we'll show you some of the hidden ways advertisers trick you so that you can be better prepared in the future.
There are a couple of words that I heard several times. First word, advertising. I saw that several times as I was listening. I saw advertising a lot, or advertisers. So that is definitely a word that I need to have on my list. I also saw tricks or heard tricks. So I have that on my list as well under number 3. And then I heard and saw in the captions, techniques. So as I am seeing and hearing words over and over again, I also saw those words occur in the title. The title says 10 ways advertisers are tricking you every day. And I heard them several times in the first 30 seconds. So already right off the bat, I know that those are 2 words, advertising and tricks. Those are 2 words that are going to be very important. I want to share with you some other words that I chose and why. I chose selling because that is what advertisers are doing, and I saw that word several times throughout the video. Techniques. A technique is a strategy used, and that word was repeated several times throughout the video as well. Study, and when they use the word study in this case, it wasn't talking about studying as you would do as a student when you study for a test. In this case, they were referencing a research study, like a scientific study. So they were talking about research here. And then I also came up with the words examples, decoys, I came up with examples because the video gave us several examples of how advertisers do that. How do advertisers trick us every day? And the rest of my words are specific terms, defined terms that they gave us that were examples of how they trick us, such as decoys, marketing tools, misleading sizes, deceptive claims. I also have on here consumers, which would be us. Anyone who buys a product is a consumer. And then proof. And proof would go along with research and study. So you can see automatically my brain is grouping things together. That's the way our brain works. It's kind of incredible. Our brain works and remembers things by sorting new information into categories or sorting new information and pairing it with information that we already knew. That's how we understand things best. So my brain is already trying to do that. And that brings us to step 2. I created 3 different, you can see below, I created 3 different categories. There was space for 4 categories, but I only came up with 3. I felt like my words fell into 3 categories most clearly, and so that's what I stuck with. In the classroom, you would most likely have a group activity, or you would bounce some ideas and group words together with a partner. But in this case, we aren't really able to do that. So I had to come up with these all on my own. The 3 categories that I chose were advertisers. And the words that I put under advertisers were selling, marketing tools, techniques, trickery, and deceptive. I put those words, I felt that those words all went together because they are all things that advertisers do. All of those words to me went together, and they went together under the category of advertisers. My second category was research. And research is a really big piece of this video and the article. That is how we know what the information that they're presenting in the article and the video is through research and scientific studies. The words that I put under research were study, examples, because we got the examples from the studies, proof, again, we get the proof from the research, and then decoys or misleading sizes. And my last category is reactions. And what I meant by reactions was what are reactions to the advertising. So I put advertising under reactions because I felt that consumers have reactions to advertising. When we see a commercial, it makes us want to go buy that thing, that product. When we see an advertisement or a new game pops up on our cell phone, it makes us want to buy that game or download that game. So I put advertising under reactions because advertising makes us react. I also put consumers under reactions because consumers, that is us, the people that buy the products, consumers are the ones that are reacting to the advertising tricks. We are the ones that the tricks are made for. And then claims. The advertisers are making claims that aren't always necessarily true, or they don't tell the whole truth. And so I put claims under reactions because I had a reaction to those claims. As I was watching the video and reading the article, I had some pretty yucky reactions to some of the things that these advertisers are doing to trick us. It's not just about making money. It is about making money, but it is also, they're deliberately on purpose trying to trick consumers, sometimes even children, a lot of times children, into buying their products. And it is kind of yucky. It's kind of gross that they're doing that. And so I put claims under reactions because I had some pretty crazy reactions to their claims. So that's what I had for Monday, step 1 and step 2. I'm interested to see, and I'm sure your teachers are interested to see the words that stood out to you. The words that stood out to you should be fairly similar to the ones that stood out to me. Maybe you chose some different specific examples from the video that were a little bit different. Maybe you put organic food. That was an extra example from the video that I didn't write down. And maybe your categories were a little bit different, but they should be fairly similar to the ones that you see here. At least the word step 1 should be fairly similar. Your categories could look very different from mine depending on the categories that you chose. So let's move on to Tuesday. The cool thing about Monday is that it leads directly into Tuesday, which is pretty neat. So these words that we chose, we're going to use them in the summary that we write for Tuesday. Tuesday asks us to summarize the video and include some of the words you selected and categorized from the video. Tell a family member about the video. So in our summary, we are going to be using the words, or at least some of the words that we selected and categorized from the video. When we write a summary, we are focusing on the central idea of the text. Now, we do not want a 5-minute long summary. The video itself was only 9 to 10 minutes. So if you are telling a summary that is really, really long, I might as well just watch the video. So when you're writing a summary, you want it straight and to the point. You only give just the basics, just the need to knows. So I'm going to show you how I did that and how I chose some of the words that were just the very most important words. And I can tell you already, and you're probably already thinking in your head, advertisers and tricks. We saw it in the title. We saw it over and over again in the video. Those are two words that definitely need to be in our summary. If we don't include any other words in our summary, those two words definitely need to be in there, for sure, for sure, for sure. So next I'm going to show you my model summary and give you some examples of the words that I used. I'm going to read the summary for you, and as I'm reading it, I want you to compare it to the summary that you wrote. How does yours compare? How many words did I use? How many of my 12 words, 10 to 12 words, did I use in my summary that you can find? And then I want you to think about your own summary. How many sentences did you use? Because we really, in a summary, should never use more than 2 to 3, because we want it to be just straight and to the point. Like I said, only the central idea and most important details. So in this case, I want you to really focus on comparing what you wrote to what I wrote. My example of a summary. So it says, this video detailed a study on how consumers respond to various advertising and selling techniques through the use of trickery and often deceptive marketing tools. Advertisers often impair a shopper's judgment by sharing misleading examples of proof and value. The message is clear. Buyer beware of decoys and false claims when making decisions on purchases. Let's go back really quickly and think about the words that I used as I was writing. So it says, this video detailed a study, check, on how consumers was one of our words, respond to various advertising and selling techniques. So just in that very first sentence, I've already used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. And this is by design. The 10 to 12 words that you chose should have been the words that stood out the most. They should be words that go along with the central idea. So they should be words that you would naturally need or want to put in your summary anyways. Let's move on. Through the use of trickery and often deceptive marketing tools, advertisers often impair a shopper's judgment by sharing misleading examples of proof and value. The message is clear. Buyer beware of decoys and false claims when making decisions on purchases. So as you can see, I included several words, but I want to talk about, now that we've talked about several of the words that I did include, I want to talk about some of the words that I didn't. Some of the words that I did not include were deceptive. No, that's not true. Some of the words that I did not include were misleading sizes and decoys. No, that's not right either. Some of the words that I did not include were misleading sizes. I ended up not including that one because it was a little too specific of an example to include. So I ended up leaving that one out because I would have had to include more and more sentences in order to explain what misleading sizes meant, because most readers wouldn't have understood exactly what that meant. So I would have had to explain it as the writer, and I didn't have enough space to do that. So I left it out. Next, we're going to talk about Wednesday. Now, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday looked a little different. Each of these days asked you to write a paragraph using text evidence to support your writing and your ideas. Now, each one of your ideas might be different from mine. I'm going to give you some samples of what you could have said, but don't be afraid if your writing looked a little different from mine. Don't be afraid if your answer was different from mine, because some of the paragraphs were opinions, and your opinion can be different from mine, and that's okay. So let's talk about Wednesday first. Wednesday asked you to write a paragraph answering the following question. What advertising technique used in last week's article, How Kids Can Resist Advertising and Be Smart Consumers, or the video, 10 Ways Advertisers Are Tricking You Every Day, did you find most surprising? Be sure to answer in a complete paragraph and include text evidence in your response. Now again, this is an opinion question. Which one of these did you find most surprising? The only way that this answer can truly be wrong is if you chose a technique that, one, is not actually an advertising technique, you just made up an answer, or if you chose an advertising technique that was not listed on either the article or the video. When we're writing to a prompt, we have to be very intentional about writing and answering the specific question we're being asked to answer. And in this case, we're being asked to write about the specific examples that are being given in either the article or the video. So that's where we have to choose from. Even if you've seen a documentary about advertising or heard a podcast about advertising once upon a time, we still have to stick to these two articles because that's what the question asked us to do. I'll share my screen with you before I tell you what I chose. I chose an example from the article. I was extremely shocked by some of the ways that advertisers target children. I have my own 2-year-old son, and so it scares me to think that there are adults out there that are specifically trying to deceive and trick my kid into wanting things that he probably wouldn't have wanted or thought he needed otherwise. So I said, as you can see, I highlighted it in green, or I changed the color of the writing in green because that is the very most important. You can pause this video if you would like to read the entire sample paragraph, but I wanted to give you just a snippet of the answer that I gave. So I said, surprisingly, kids can be very unaware that they are being targeted. While using Snapchat with friends or by using other social media apps, habits and interests are being traced by advertising agencies. Studies reveal how companies gain information about likes and interests through tracking. Using your phone's GPS and other data, companies send targeted text advertising nearby products and services. And then I go on to elaborate on that. That was the most shocking thing to me. And so that's the example that I chose. But there were many other shocking revelations that I found that you could have chosen to write about. Again, if you want to be able to read the entire sample paragraph, just pause the video and read the whole thing so you can get a better understanding of what a professional response to this question would have looked like with evidence and everything. Thursday's assignment was to compare and contrast the author's purpose in the article to the creator's purpose in making the video. Were both the article and video made for the same target audience? Explain by using evidence from both the article and video in your answer. For time's sake, this is another one that I'm not going to go all the way through. I will scroll up to the entire article, or not the article. I will scroll up to the entire paragraph so that if you want to read the whole sample, that you can pause the video and read it there, read it then. I want to show you though, and very quickly talk about this graphic organizer I have at the top, where I've compared and contrasted the article and the video. The biggest difference between the article and the video was the target audience. I felt like the article, obviously because of the title, was targeted more towards kids and how advertisers are targeting children. There were lots of different examples of that, like pulling the Snapchat data and so forth. And then the YouTube video was talking more about the general consumer, and I thought targeted more towards adults and older people. They used examples of organic food, misleading sizes, anthropomorphism, which is a really difficult word to say. And so in my So I went on below in my paragraph to talk about each of those. I gave evidence from both text, as it told me to do above, and explained evidence from both texts. So again, if you would like to read and get a better idea of the sample, you can just pause the video. Friday asks you to, in another complete paragraph, argue whether the video or the article is more persuasive and why. Be sure to include details from both the article and the video in your response. This is another persuasive piece of writing. It's an opinion piece, so you're going to have to decide which one you thought was more persuasive and why. And I'm not going to show you an example of this one because the answers will vary, which means the answers will be different for everybody. I personally thought that the article about the kids was the most persuasive. It was the most persuasive to me because it was very shocking. It played to my emotions because I have a kid and I was a kid once, and it made me think that maybe I wasn't as greedy as I thought I was once when I was a kid. I remember looking and watching TV and thinking, oh, I want that. And the article about the kids made me really understand more about myself as a kid and how I can help my own child avoid the pitfalls of advertising. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope that if you have any questions about what we discussed today, that you reach out to your own teacher. If there was anything that I went over that was different from what your own teacher usually says or teaches, then reach out to your teacher and ask him or her questions about what we talked about. I'm sure they would love to hear from you.